Beth Carrington stood alone in her glass office, the city lights just starting to glow through the early morning mist. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then rested gently on the printed form in front of her. Form 44-VLR, Voluntary License Relinquishment. Technova's legal team sent it 3 days ago. For 3 days, she'd studied every line like a battlefield map. Her signature was already at the bottom, inked, notarized, valid, but not submitted. That was the key difference. On the surface, it looked like surrender, but Beth knew what Clause 8B meant. She'd written it herself 6 years ago, buried deep in the license system's code. If a signed relinquishment is recorded within 72 hours prior to termination, the system shall revert administrative access to the license author for 30 business days. It was meant for emergencies, to stop tampering. Now, it was her perfect trap. Her office phone buzzed. HR scheduled a meeting for 11 a.m., conference room C, an assistant said flatly. No excuse, no apology, just the next move. Beth closed the file, stood, and placed the signed form into a thin leather folder. Her face stayed calm, almost peaceful. Every step was part of a silent script she'd written herself. Walking down the hall, she felt the stares. Curious, pitying. Some looked away. Others gave weak, silent nods. She ignored them all. Her heels clicked softly on the polished floor, like a quiet countdown only she could hear. Quietly, the conference room door was slightly open. Inside waited 3 people, the HR director, a junior associate, and a man from legal she recognized. The HR director cleared her throat. Due to company changes and efficiency plans, your role is dissolved, effective immediately. She smiled tightly, expecting a fight. Beth blinked slowly. I understand. I'll need a printed termination letter, signed and dated, for my records. The legal man nodded. Of course, we'll have it ready within the hour. Beth opened her folder and slid Form 44 VLR across the table. If it helps, she said calmly, here's my voluntary relinquishment, signed and notarized. The HR associate snatched it up, almost too eagerly. They thought she was giving up. They thought they'd won. But the submission wasn't manual. The system had already registered her signature timestamp when she uploaded it the night before. That single action triggered Clause 8B. By the time HR called her in, the automated process had already begun. Quietly shifting the license system's backbone, redirecting root authority to her backup account, bcar_admin_layer. No one noticed. No one questioned the timing. She stood, nodded once, and walked out. She didn't look back. At the front desk, she laid her badge on the counter. The badge reader blinked red, then green. That was the last handshake the system would allow from her old identity. As the elevator doors closed, a former colleague slipped in beside her. I'm sorry, Beth, he murmured, eyes down. She gave a gentle nod, but said nothing. Let them believe what they wanted. Outside, the city buzzed. Beth pulled her coat tighter, crossing the plaza with calm, detached grace. No drama, no fanfare, just a woman with a plan already moving. Her phone buzzed once, a simple alert. Admin override activated. She slipped the phone back into her pocket, the faintest smile touching her lips. Deep in Technova servers, a silent shift happened. The dashboard that once listed her as former license manager now showed a new operator, Admin Layer B, Carrington. 30 business days of total control. That's what they'd given her by trying to cut her out. They thought they'd removed her power. All they did was pull the trigger she'd left waiting, and it had already fired. The email arrived at 7:13 p.m. Subject: License Revocation Request Accepted. File 22. It listed every credential tied to her name, all 31, marked for automatic cancellation within 48 hours unless reassigned by a certified, federally registered replacement. Spoiler, there wasn't one. She closed her laptop, poured cranberry seltzer, and sat by her apartment window. Outside, the city blurred. Cars slid through traffic. People clutched takeout. Normal life. But in 3 systems across 3 federal agencies, something unusual started. The cancellation clock began ticking. Back at Technova Labs, Mark Brooks was still in the office. He led a whiteboard session titled Reimagining Safety, Scalable Trust. 5 junior staffers nodded, too young to know a real audit. Madison Lee presented her draft of the new licensing plan. Mark beamed. This is exactly the initiative we need. The old system was too centralized. One person holding all the keys? Not sustainable. He pointed at Madison's bright teal flowchart. Initiate, delegate, report, validate, certify. No one asked who had the legal power for the last step. Meanwhile, Beth reopened her encrypted folder. Inside was a private tracker, a simple list titled Countdown Dashboard. 3 columns: license ID, status, cancellation timer. She scrolled down. Every license now read pending cancellation. Timers beside each ticked in real time. The shortest, 47 hours. The longest, 48. The system she'd built years ago was now dismantling itself. Efficient, precise, completely legal. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Control wasn't always loud. At 8:50 p.m., a ping came through. Slack message from Jules. A screenshot from Mark's private chat with legal. Should we prep reassignment docs for FDA clients, or will the portal update once a license is out? Response? Unsure. Check with IT tomorrow. No rush. Finalize delegation first. No rush. Beth stared at those words. Then she sipped her lukewarm tea. Let him finalize. Let him tinker and rename. The structure he built had no legal spine. By 10:20 p.m., the second confirmation arrived from the National Regulatory Board. Federal IDs flagged for cancellation. Visibility for reapplication restricted to authorized agents only. Meaning, anyone trying to take over her licenses now had to start from scratch. Weeks of registration, training, approval. No shortcuts. No update contact button. She shut her laptop for the night. Outside, traffic hum softened. The world didn't notice what was set in motion. But inside Technova's walls, though they didn't know it yet, something vital had been unplugged. The lights were on, but the power was cut. Mark, for his part, drafted a Q4 update for the executives. Subject: Safety Optimization Phase 1 near completion. He typed the closing line with pride. We are on track to fully restructure safety management by month's end. Unnecessary roles eliminated. New ownership protocols in development. He hit send, leaned back, cracked his knuckles. He had no idea the licenses he planned to reassign were now silent, ticking traps. Each one tied to a system refusing to work without confirmed federal oversight. The clock wasn't just ticking, it was burning. And Beth? She wasn't watching for smoke. She'd lit the match. It started with one email. At 8:23 a.m., a major client, STEMED Medical, flagged an urgent message. Urgent shipment, year 417, rejected. Certification ID, CN2231, invalid. Delivery halted. No valid registration. Madison Lee stared at the screen, blinking. That's one of ours, right? She pulled up Mark's team's redesigned dashboard, all green last week. She forwarded the message to Mark. Possible mismatch with updated license records? Mark, busy in his morning Zoom, didn't read it. By 9:10 a.m., 3 more alerts hit. 2 from vendors, 1 from production. Safety signature mismatch, system cannot validate officer, error code 470, license orphaned. Finally, Mark jumped into the safety Slack thread. Just update the license holder to Madison Lee, should fix it. Madison tried, edit failed. Error, authorization restricted, officer not eligible. They tried again, using a forced override script. Rejected. System status, revoked. No valid replacement found. Tension spread in the conference room. Mark paced, arms folded. Frustrated? Has to be a glitch. Escalate it with the credentialing board. Junior analyst Sam cleared his throat. Quietly, I checked the federal registry. The certification, it's no longer assigned to us. Says revoked by officer of record. Mark blinked. What officer? Silence. Madison's voice was small. Beth. By 10:45 a.m., it was emergency mode. Operations, safety, legal crowded around the meeting table as dashboards flickered red. 8 licenses flipped from pending to suspended. 4 more tagged invalid. Vendor syncs failed. Deliveries paused mid-queue. Project stalled. Madison pulled up a folder. Q3 license delegation plan. She hesitated. We were supposed to finalize this today, but now none of it's legal. Mark rubbed his eyes. Fine. Someone else submits for replacement. Start the reauthorization process. That's when Jules, silent until now, slid a printed report across the table. Her face was pale. Calmly, I traced every license Beth held, 31 total. Medical device rules, safety oversight, export tracking. Mark flipped through it. Jules pointed at highlighted lines. No one here is eligible to register for reissuance. Not one employee has all 3 federal certification levels. Madison's still in stage 1. But we can fast track, right? Mark asked, tone strained. Jules didn't smile. Flatly, federal licenses aren't pizza, no express lane, 4 to 6 weeks minimum. If Madison passes all 3 exams and federal interviews. Silence fell like dust. Then who, Mark asked slowly, can sign off on these certifications right now? Jules didn't flinch. Only Beth Carrington. And she just voluntarily revoked every single one. Madison looked down. Sam sighed loudly. Mark stood frozen, jaw clenched, staring at the flickering screens as if he could reset them by will. They didn't change. Outside the room, the emails kept coming. It started with one email. At 8:23 a.m., a major client, StemMed Medical, flagged an urgent message. Urgent shipment, year 417, rejected. Certification ID CN2231, invalid. Delivery halted. No valid registration. Madison Lee stared at the screen, blinking. That's one of ours, right? She pulled up Mark's team's redesigned dashboard, all green last week. She forwarded the message to Mark. Possible mismatch with updated license records? Mark, busy in his morning Zoom, didn't read it. By 9:10 a.m., 3 more alerts hit. 2 from vendors, 1 from production. Safety signature mismatch. System cannot validate officer. Error code 470. License orphaned. Finally, Mark jumped into the safety Slack thread. Just update the license holder to Madison Lee. Should fix it. Madison tried. Edit failed. Error. Authorization restricted. Officer not eligible. They tried again, using a forced override script. Rejected. System status? Revoked. No valid replacement found. Tension spread in the conference room. Mark paced, arms folded. Frustrated? Has to be a glitch. Escalate it with the credentialing board. Junior analyst Sam cleared his throat. Quietly, I checked the federal registry. The certification, it's no longer assigned to us. Says revoked by officer of record. Mark blinked. What officer? Silence. Madison's voice was small. Beth. By 10:45 a.m., it was emergency mode. Operations, safety, legal crowded around the meeting table as dashboards flickered red. 8 licenses flipped from pending to suspended. 4 more tagged invalid. Vendor syncs failed. Deliveries paused mid-queue. Project stalled. Madison pulled up a folder. Q3 license delegation plan. She hesitated. We were supposed to finalize this today, but now none of it's legal. Mark rubbed his eyes. Fine. Someone else submits for replacement. Start the reauthorization process. That's when Jules, silent until now, slid a printed report across the table. Her face was pale. Calmly, I traced every license Beth held, 31 total. Medical device rules, safety oversight, export tracking. Mark flipped through it. Jules pointed at highlighted lines. No one here is eligible to register for reissuance. Not one employee has all 3 federal certification levels. Madison's still in stage 1. But we can fast track, right? Mark asked, tone strained. Jules didn't smile. Flatly, federal licenses aren't pizza, no express lane, 4 to 6 weeks minimum. If Madison passes all 3 exams and federal interviews. Silence fell like dust. Then who, Mark asked slowly, can sign off on these certifications right now? Jules didn't flinch. Only Beth Carrington, and she just voluntarily revoked every single one. Madison looked down. Sam sighed loudly. Mark stood frozen, jaw clenched, staring at the flickering screens as if he could reset them by will. They didn't change. Outside the room, the emails kept coming. At 9:12 a.m., the front desk called up to safety. 3 FDA inspectors here, scheduled audit, asking for your license portal. Madison froze mid-sentence. She'd been drafting a vendor reply. Wait, what audit? Sam blanked. The Q3 routine inspection. They do one every year now. Someone should have known. Beth would have known. Madison swallowed hard. Tell them we'll be right down. The cracks didn't come with sirens, just a gentle knock. By 9:20 a.m., the 3 FDA reps sat quietly in conference room B, navy blazers, neutral expressions. One opened a sleek laptop. Please log us into the credential dashboard. We'll review your active certifications before the facility walkthrough. Madison nodded to IT. Mark was still on a call in his office. Jonas, the IT tech, entered the login credentials they'd set up under Madison's new profile. Access denied. Error code 70. No authorized officer found. He tried again. Same result. Whispers. Try Mark's admin override, Sam urged. Jonas hesitated, then typed it. Access restricted. License authority not validated. Log in using registered officer of record. By the time Mark entered the room at 9:45 a.m., things were falling apart. What's the problem? He asked, eyeing the silent FDA officials. Madison kept her voice low. Portals rejecting all logins, demands an approved officer of record. They revoked Beth's access. Just overwrite it with a temporary session ID, Mark snapped. Jonas shook his head. No temp option. Locked federally. Need verified clearance. Fine, use her old credentials. Jonas froze. That's against protocol. Do it, Mark barked. We need the data now. At 9:51 a.m., Jonas entered Beth Carrington's deactivated login. The screen blinked. For a second, it seemed to work. Then the background went black. A red message flashed. Unauthorized access detected. User revoked. Status blacklisted. Incident reported to NRCS and internal audit. Jonas's face went white. We triggered a fraud alert. Mark stood still. What does that mean? Jules entered just then. It means we just locked ourselves out, permanently. By 10:05 a.m., every safety portal at Technova Labs was in lockdown. The FDA auditors sat quietly, no longer asking questions. One typed a note and closed their tablet. We cannot proceed with active certifications. This will be marked as a failed inspection. Mark tried to argue. It's a temporary tech issue. We'll fix it. We understand, one rep said flatly. You'll receive the report in 48 hours. Coordinate appeals with enforcement. They stood, shook no hands, left. Upstairs, Mark's inbox pinged. Subject, compliance breach notification. Attempted access to revoked credentials flagged. Submit written incident explanation by 2 p.m. Legal review pending. He closed the email without replying. The room felt thinner, like oxygen was draining. Madison sat motionless, staring blankly. Jules quietly handed her a printed checklist Beth used to run before every audit. At the bottom, in small blue ink, was Beth's handwriting. Never improvise with federal systems. They remember everything. Mark didn't speak. He walked into his office, closed the door, and turned off the lights. No alarms screamed, no one shouted, but the building knew the system had snapped shut. Callum Vance returned to the office like a man expecting applause. Tan from Capri, crisp blue linen shirt. He strolled through Technova's atrium at 8:37 a.m., finger-gunning the front desk, winking at reception. Finally upgrading the espresso machine? No one laughed. A junior assistant offered a tight smile, handing him a sealed folder. Legal said give you this first. Callum raised an eyebrow. The audit? He didn't wait for an answer. Upstairs, the silence hit him. Not just quiet, stillness. No keyboard clicks, no hallway chatter, no meeting buzz. He stepped into the executive suite. Mark's office door was open, empty. Madison stood frozen at the copier, a report dangling from her hand. Legal's door was shut. Safety was dark. He walked into the conference room, dropped the folder. Get every department head, now. By 9:02 a.m., the table was full. Operations, safety, legal, IT, logistics, all looked like they hadn't slept. Jules sat quietly at the far end. Mark sat beside her, bags under his eyes, jaw clenched. Callum didn't sit. He connected his tablet to the big screen, opened the internal license dashboard. It took 3 seconds to load. Then it turned blood red. System status, regulatory failure. Active licenses, 0. Certifying officer of record, B. Carrington. Status, revoked. No replacement registered. Callum scanned the room, coldly. Is this a test system? No one answered. He looked at Mark. What the hell am I looking at? Mark cleared his throat. Defensive. There was a restructuring. Beth was reassigned. Then left. We planned to delegate her licenses, but the portal rejected it. Complications arose. Callum's voice dropped dangerously low. You removed the only person tied to our federal safety authority with no backup? We assumed the role could be reassigned. You assumed? Legal spoke up, voice grim. We confirmed over the weekend, all 31 licenses revoked. Federal database now requires full recertification from a qualified person. Callum clicked through screens on the dashboard. Device compliance, export validation, manufacturing inspection. Every module flashed the same red alert. Access blocked, officer revoked, no valid replacement. He closed his eyes briefly. The audit? Jules finally spoke. Calmly. Failed. FDA marked it incomplete due to credential denial. Callum looked at her. Why didn't anyone stop this? Jules hesitated. She tried. Beth flagged the risk 2 months ago. It was dismissed. Callum said nothing. He grabbed the HR file, flipped pages, stopped at a highlighted section. Clause 8B. In event of involuntary termination, all company-sponsored licenses held by employee shall be nullified within 48 hours unless properly reassigned under federal protocols. He stared at the words. His empire wasn't burning. It was hollowed out. On the screen behind him, Beth's name remained bold. B. Carrington. Status, revoked. No replacement found. The dashboard pulsed red in silence. Beth let the phone ring just long enough. She recognized the number. Graham Niles, Director of Operations, once an arrogant man who called her safety rules overly cautious, now reduced to cold calling the person they thought they'd outgrown. She answered with calm clarity. This is Beth. Graham hesitated. She could almost hear him swallowing his pride like glass. Strained. Beth, it's Graham. Listen, we've run into a situation. Silence on her end said enough. He stumbled forward. Look, we know things ended badly, but we're asking for help. We need you. She didn't flinch, sipped her coffee. Outside, a breeze lifted her curtain like a white flag. Graham continued, We got it wrong. You were right. Everyone sees it now. We need someone to reauthorize the licenses. We're bleeding, Beth. She let his words hang. Once, his voice boomed in boardrooms, dismissing her with empty smiles. Now it trembled like an old wire. She thought of anger, of triumph, of a cutting reply to make him hurt. Instead, her voice came out soft, even. That's a nice offer. Then she hung up. No threats, no insult, just a full stop. Back in Technova's boardroom, Graham stared at his phone. Callum looked up. Did she agree? Graham slowly shook his head. She's not coming. The room froze. Legal glanced at Safety. Safety looked at IT. Mark buried his face in his hands. No plan B. No one expected her silent trap to snap so perfectly shut. Back in her apartment, Beth set the phone down beside her espresso. The quiet felt complete, not triumphant, just still. Her laptop pinged. A message from Helix Core, the new firm that welcomed her last week. Subject: Technova still flagged. FDA audit halted. She smiled. Not wide, not smug, just enough. She typed one line back to her new CEO. And this is only the beginning. Outside, traffic rolled on. Life moved. And Beth Carrington didn't need revenge. She was already writing the next chapter. Beth tapped the final key, then leaned back, exhaling softly. On her screen, the update appeared in crisp black font. Director of Safety, Helix Core Technologies. No caption, no announcement, just a simple LinkedIn profile change. One sentence, one line of black ink. That was all. The moment it went live, notifications blinked. Not likes, private messages. Quiet, curious. Within an hour, 2 major Technova clients posted public statements. Ardentia Health Systems, Flagstone Capital. Both cited the same reason for leaving: commitment to certification continuity and long-term ethical safety. Neither named Technova. Both tagged Helix Core. Beth didn't smile. She closed the laptop, turned to the window. Sun glinted off rooftops. Glass caught the afternoon gold. In her hand, half-sipped tea. On her lap, a novel unfinished for months. For the first time in weeks, she read more than 2 pages. Then, a vibration. Her phone buzzed face down. A message from Jules. "You'll want to see this." Attached, a screenshot from a private Technova Slack channel Beth once managed. It showed Mark Greaves, the COO, typing at 3:16 p.m. Is there any way to restore Beth's license privileges temporarily? 8 people had seen it. No one replied. Jules didn't add anything. She didn't need to. The silence in the screenshot said everything. Beth read it twice. Her tea had gone cold. She set the cup down gently. Her eyes held no vengeance, no smugness, just the deep calm of watching a tide retreat after the storm has passed. She typed back to Jules. Inevitable. Thank you. Then she turned off her phone. Outside, light shifted soft and pink. She stood, stretched, walked to her small kitchen. The kettle clicked on. She didn't check emails, didn't refresh feeds, didn't measure her worth by pings. She'd built her own boundary, crossed into something firmer, quieter, hers. The irony wasn't lost. A company flaunting innovation now sat paralyzed by its own choices. Executives who dismissed her warnings were caught in the net they wove. Mark's Slack message wasn't just desperation. It was confession. She thought of the interns she'd mentored, the late nights building safety protocols no one found glamorous. Those unseen layers were the only thing holding the broken system now. Except she wasn't holding it anymore. Beth walked back slowly, not hesitant, but present. She opened the window slightly. Summer air carried jasmine and street sounds. She let it in. Behind her, her laptop blinked with another notification. She didn't look. Not tonight. Tonight, she was free from expectation, from blame, even from victory. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was signed in her own ink. Beth didn't need a big ending. No applause, no victory parade, just a Tuesday morning with strong coffee, a clear sky over Boston, and peace humming through the glass walls of her new corner office at Helix Core. Her desk was clean, minimalist. No stacks of old paper, no stress relics from a company that saw her as legacy, just dual monitors, a sleek keyboard, and one yellow sticky note pinned to the screen's edge. Handwritten. In case they ever forget, I was the license. The dashboard on her monitor glowed green, every section, every safety rule. She watched the system hum perfectly. Medical shipments, drug reports, vendor checks, all running, all certified, all tied to one name, B. Carrington, Chief Safety Officer. The difference? She wasn't fighting to be heard. She was the reason things worked. A soft ping echoed on her second screen, an industry alert. She clicked lazily, already knowing. A bold red headline. Technova Labs added to FDA enforcement watch list. She skimmed. Failure to renew critical certifications, unregistered oversight, active vendor flags unresolved. Below, a smaller note. Former Safety Officer B. Carrington assumed executive role at Helix Corps 3 weeks prior. She didn't smirk, didn't gloat, just took another sip of black Colombian roast and leaned back. A knock at her door. "Boardroom's ready, Beth," said Camilla, a junior analyst she'd mentored since day 2 at Helix. Kind, smart, no ego. "Thanks," Beth nodded, rising with calm purpose. She grabbed her laptop, tucked a hard copy of the original safety blueprint under her arm, the one she'd refined for over a decade at Technova, and followed Camilla down the hall. They were meeting Helix Corps' largest biotech client. Beth remembered Technova courting them, using their name like a trophy in every earnings call. Now they'd chosen trust over flash, substance over slogans. Just before stepping into the boardroom, Beth paused. She thought of Mark's smirk, the interns calling her color-coded charts cute, the HR folder handed over without a word, the morning she was locked out of her own system, the silence when no one stood up. Then she let it go. She walked in, professional, unapologetic, took her seat at the head of the table, opened her laptop, began not with a pitch, but with simple assurance. Here's what safety should feel like. Stable, clear, permanent. Across town, Technova choked on paperwork, fielded regulator calls, scrambled to rebuild systems they didn't understand. Mark had been demoted, now just a project liaison, stripped of clearance, stripped of his story. The company lost not just its footing, but its credibility. And Beth? She wasn't coming back. She wasn't even looking back. She didn't need revenge. She had structure. She had clarity. She had her name on every single framework Helix Corps depended on. And that sticky note? It stayed pinned. Not for pride, not for bitterness, just in case they ever forget.